architecture degree, and I really want to fuse industrial hemp into building materials. So 28 states have introduced hemp legislation, 16 have passed it, and 9 have actually removed barriers to researching hemp. So, we are on the right path. There's still a lot of work to be done, and it definitely needs to happen at the federal level. Ron Paul, I'm sure as most of you are aware, he introduces every year the Industrial Hemp Farming Act. And steadily that is gaining votes, but it's still pretty far off from ever passing. Now, Kelly and I have always heard, and also in The Emperor Wears No Clothes, that George Washington Carver studied hemp and he grew hemp. And, for those of, I'm sure most of you are aware, but George Washington Carver, he was an American scientist, African-American famous scientist, a botanist, an educator, an inventor. He grew up in Neosho, Missouri. He's from this area. He's a very famous scientist. And, much of his fame came from the research and promotion of crops like cotton and peanuts. He really wanted poor farmers to grow alternative crops, both for a source of food and for a source of other products to improve their life. He worked on over 100 products and made from peanuts that are used for the house and the farm, also cosmetics, dyes, paints, plastics, gasolines. But what you won't find when you go to the George Washington Carver Museum in Neosho is anything about hemp. And it's really upsetting. And I think we need to let the museum know that they're erasing this history of the cannabis plant right here in this area. Now, so George Washington Carver, like I said, he experimented with hemp, and I'm just going to kind of read some excerpts of this document that came from the museum that Kelly basically uncovered. And we're going to get this out on the internet. This is kind of like the first time a lot of people have heard this before. So George Washington Carver, he knew hemp was great for paper. As is the case with alcohol for fuel, it has the commercial virtue of renewability. The source plant usually takes months to mature, compared to at least 20 years for a pulp tree. It has the strength of the hemp fiber, which Carver mentions, causes hemp paper to last hundreds of years longer than paper made from trees. Now, the government's claim that their motive for the law was the potential use of hemp as a narcotic is questionable, and this is from Carver. This isn't from Jack Hare. Hemp has been grown. Hemp grown for fibers has no narcotics in it. The type that is grown has a sort of resin that could easily have been outlawed separately. The laws appear to have been aimed at keeping hemp's economic niche empty. Hemp had supplied over 90% of the world's paper until after the U.S. Civil War, when it was replaced by a cheaper, less labor-intensive, but toxic wood pulp sulfide process. Now, a lot of you know that newspaper mogul William Randolph Hearst, he essentially had a monopoly with paper mills, and he owned so many newspapers across the country. And this was right at the time when the decorticator was invented to speed up the process of processing hemp and manufacturing hemp. So there is a lot of evidence that that some industry was involved with making hemp illegal back in the beginning. A lot of you probably know also that during World War II, the United States lifted its ban off hemp, the Hemp for War effort, and allowed U.S. farmers to grow hemp for the war, for parachute cordage and rope and canvas and bags and all kinds of stuff for World War II. Now, George Washington Carver actually worked with Henry Ford developing a hemp automobile that would be grown from the ground up. And this was Ford's vision, and it wasn't entirely made of hemp, but hemp was a substantial piece of the product. The Ford company had one of the largest plastic molding plants in America, and they actually converted that plastic from petrochemicals into making plastics out of beans. And they were experimenting around. After hundreds of experimental panels had been belted by blows by a hammer, with nothing less than that armor plate would have resisted, they found a mixture of plants that included hemp and flax and a number of other plants, and they basically created a mold for outside car panels, and it resisted more than steel and more than any of these other plants. It was a very strong body shell for the car to be grown from the ground up. So it is kind of unfortunate, that we're looking at this so long ago, and we're still making cars from petrochemicals, and still making most of our products from petrochemicals. When Carter wrote about his new achievement, he told Ford, "I follow your predictions with so much interest and real enthusiasm, indeed inspiring enthusiasm, as I have never known you," which he's talking to Ford, "to predict anything that did not come true." But Ford's 1938 prediction did not come true. When the United States went to World War II, they suspended automobile production, and the efforts were abandoned to create hemp cars. So, you know, I really hope, you know, the manufacturing industry, you know, looks back and, you know, reinvestigates, you know, hemp and building materials and cars and manufacturing, things of that nature. I want to talk a little bit about hemp and architecture and building materials real quickly. I have a hemp concrete block at that table that I poured, and you guys can come check that out if you want to see an actual hemp, you know, building material. Now, hemp can be made into any building material, including fiberboard, roofing, flooring, wallboard, caulking, cement, paint, paneling, particle board, plaster, plywood, reinforced concrete, insulation, insulation panels, spray-on insulation, concrete pipes, bricks, and biodegradable plastics, which are tougher than steel. Foundations can be made from the hemp herds, which is the inside part of the plant, and processed based on an ancient technology adapted for modern use. Hemp foundation walls are 7 times stronger than concrete foundations, half as light, and 3 times as elastic, which means that these buildings will bend and not break. Because of their superior strength and flexibility, hemp foundations are resistant to stress-induced cracking and breaking. Even earthquakes and other natural disasters, you know, have a tougher time, you know, breaking these hemp foundations and hempen walls. Hemp foundation homes and buildings are self-insulated, including thermal and sound insulation, resistant to rotting, rodents, insects, and they're fireproof, waterproof, weather-resistant, and the walls breathe so the rooms do not get stuffy. Hemp homes stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Concrete pipes can be made out of hemp, which costs about 1/3 of polypropylene. These pipes have greater flexibility, greater elasticity, and are resistant to cracking. Artificial stone can be made out of hemp by wetting the stalk cellulose and forming it into a hard black rock, which can then be cut, drilled, cast, carved, or formed into any shape. You can kind of do some like really cool sculptural adobe stuff with it. Hemp building materials could allow us to replace the need for wood, bricks, fiberglass, and insulation. Now, the hemp plant can be used in remediation also in brownfields. You know, brownfields are, you know, like toxic waste dump sites. So you can do that with mushrooms also. Basically, the plant sucks up a lot of the toxic chemicals. Hemp can be used in that regard also. It's excellent for crop rotation. A lot of the farmers around here need a 3rd rotational crop. They cannot use hemp, of course, because it's illegal. It loosens the roots, the soil. The fallen leaves return beneficial organic matter to the soil. And in many cases, industrial hemp can be planted as a means to stabilize the soil, thus lessening the amount of valuable land that is lost to erosion. Now, the actual growth of the plant itself can alleviate the need for millions of pounds of toxic waste, toxic fertilizer, that contaminates our watersheds, our rivers, our oceans. It will improve our water quality, replenishing aquifers, and leading to a whole new potential for the incorporation of industrial hemp plant into our landscape. So, you know, hemp is so environmental, and, you know, with the coming catastrophe of climate change, and, you know, with all the serious crises we're facing right now with overpopulation and peak oil, you know, hemp is a needed agricultural crop that we really needed decades and decades ago. Now, I really believe hemp can help fill this gap, and I hope that we see, you know, things that Ford envisioned decades ago. Who's got a cell phone here? Anybody have a cell phone anymore? Nobody has a cell phone, right? Can everybody hold their cell phone up, please? Everybody take your cell phone out. Come on, guys. I know you got cell phones. I want to give you all a number. It's Ron Richard's number. Ron Richard is one of the biggest opponents to medical marijuana here in Missouri, and he is your Speaker of the House for the Republican Party. I'm going to give you his phone number. I want you guys to call Ron Richard. Call him today. Call him tomorrow. Leave a message. Area code 573-751-2173. Tell Ron Richards that you support medical marijuana. Ron Richards is also running for the Missouri State Senate. I also want to tell you guys real quickly, I'm going to wrap this up, about a really horrible law that almost got a vote in Congress the other day. It's called the Safe Harbor Elimination Act. And this is a really draconian law. This law would basically make it illegal for Americans to smoke marijuana in Amsterdam. What do you guys think about that? Isn't that ridiculous? Let's get some boos on that, please. I mean, they were going to make it illegal for Americans to smoke marijuana in Amsterdam. Are they going to send American police over there and arrest us in a foreign country? This law almost made it to the floor of Congress. And you know, we need to watch out for things like this. It did not get up for a vote, partly because of our efforts and all the phone calls that we made to Nancy Pelosi. But we need to monitor things like this and make sure this doesn't happen again. And I want to quickly comment on some remarks that Paul Armentano from Normal made last night at Missouri Southern State University forum with Gary Johnson. Some people were asking Paul, what can you do? What can I do? How do I get involved? And it's really, you have to ask yourself, where are your talents? Are you a good writer? Are you into graphic design? Do you have business connections? Do you have political connections? What's your major? Try to implement your skills into the movement. If you live in Joplin and you want to get involved, just talk to Kelly Maddie. Talk to Kelly Maddie. He'll get you involved real quick. If you don't live in Joplin, investigate and see if there is a drug policy chapter there. If there's not a drug policy chapter, form a drug policy chapter. Read some books on organizing. Get on the internet. Read some websites about organizing tips. Major in political science. Now, I just wanted to close, and I just wanted to hope you guys remember this quote. This is a really important quote that the DEA actually said in 1987, that marijuana is one of the safest therapeutic substances known to man. And I want to get one more legalize it, please, from y'all. 1, 2, 3.
Legalize it!
Thanks a lot for coming out, guys. Appreciate y'all.